Well, last night we saw the end of the DCEU, whatever the E stands for, universe.
Extended.
And we saw The Flash.
Detective Comics Extended Universe.
Connor, what is the plot of The Flash?
The Flash stars Ezra Miller as Barry Allen. Barry Allen saves a bunch of CGI babies and is really sad that his mom is dead and his dad is probably going to be stuck in prison for the rest of his natural life. So Barry gets real sad and runs really fast and realizes he can rewind time if he runs past the speed of light. And he rewinds it to the point where his mother dies and he basically saves her. But in doing so, realizes that he's in an alternate timeline where his mother never dies, and there's a different Flash who basically is him, except if his mother never died. So he's a weird stoner, and he has to help this Flash get powers so that they can, so he can try to restore time. But in giving him the powers, he realizes that he didn't really restore time. And eventually General Zod starts invading Earth, like in Man of Steel, because Flash time travels back to when he was in college. And he needs to try to find other heroes to fight General Zod. But in this world, it turns out in him messing with the timeline, and also just the fact that he's in an alternate universe, there is no Aquaman or Cyborg or Superman, Wonder Woman, none of them. But he's able to eventually find out that there is still a Batman, and that Batman happens to be Michael Keaton. And they also find out there is a Kryptonian on Earth, which they assume is Superman, but it turns out it's actually Supergirl. They fight Zod, and the rest is going to be spoilers, so turn it off if you don't want spoilers. But they fight Zod, and they get in a Wrath of Khan no-win scenario, and alternate Barry, who had his mom and stuff, keeps trying to rewind time to stop the Earth from being destroyed by Zod and saving Batman and Supergirl, but ultimately he realizes that that's impossible, and so Flash basically has to learn to let go of things he can't change. Some things are just destined to happen. And so he goes back to his timeline, and his dad is exonerated, but it turns out it's not actually his timeline, and he lives in the timeline where George Clooney is Batman. And the movie ends. So Aiden, what did you think of The Flash?
The Flash is pretty decent. It's got a number of issues. Namely, this movie is completely unfinished. Every inch of CGI in this movie is terrible, and it's all over the place. It looks like Son of the Mask half the time. It's real bad.
Yeah.
It's some real stinky, unfinished mess.
Well, that also extends to all of the deep fakes in the movie.
Yeah, the deep fakes are really something. Seeing old George Reeves standing there,
Looking weird.
looking like a weird cartoon, Adam West, and you know,
Christopher Reeves. And they even brought back the original Supergirl.
yeah. And Nick Cage Superman fights the giant spider he was always destined to fight, which is funny. Yeah. The CGI is fucked. Ezra Miller's a weird, alleged pedophile kidnapper thing.
We'll have to come back to that.
We can
We'll
loop
loop back to that and the death of the DCEU.
I think there's a couple clunky parts, like they rescue Supergirl and she's like, why would I save the Earth? And then she flies around for 2 minutes and comes back and she's like, okay, I'll help you save the Earth. But the movie's not really about that. And it's not really about the Zod stuff either. Really, there's no villain in this movie. Not particularly. Eventually the Flash just realizes what the right thing to do is and does it. But, yeah, it's pretty decent. The, action is a bit awkward at times, but you get a decently emotional story about letting go, which is kind of like the opposite of the one Spider-Man had last week. The cast is surprisingly good. Michael Keaton coming back as Batman is charming. The two Flashes dynamic, even though it looks wonky a lot of the time, works decently well to have them play off each other. New Supergirl's fine. I like everything that's going on. It's a cute little movie that definitely could have benefited from some extra CGI work, extra time to get that all smoothed out. But yeah, it's a nice little, mostly self-contained Flash story that is occasionally kind of funny, decently fun. Nice little emotional arc for our characters. Seeing Michael Keaton back is good. George Clooney's little cameo is funny. Nick Cage. It works decently well. I had rock bottom expectations and they were pretty shattered. And obviously there's stuff to say about Ezra Miller and the DCEU, but I'll let you get your general thoughts out on the movie first.
Yeah, I liked this movie. I didn't love it. I do think there's a lot of issues, like you said, the CGI, which kind of ties into unearned fan service. Not even unearned per se, just pointless fan service. Like, you have Nick Cage's Superman fighting the spider, which is a very obscure reference to people who know the history of the canceled Superman Lives. It's kind of cool. You see Adam West, you see George Reeves, you see all of the old DC heroes that you might want to see.
It's kind of creepy the dead ones are back, but
yeah, it's really creepy because most of them are dead. Adam West, George Reeves, Christopher Reeves. But they don't really have a role other than the fact that they're kind of just there to illustrate that the multiverse is starting to collapse because of the Flash's actions. And if he doesn't basically start doing something, it's going to be over for everyone. It's fine. Like that's all fine. The fan service wasn't too obnoxious. It wasn't like, some fan service. The only one that really comes back in any meaningful way is Michael Keaton. And I like what they did with Michael Keaton. At first he's like, I retired because I just stopped crime entirely in Gotham. But then he's like, wouldn't it be kind of fun to do one last ride? And he just acts like Michael Keaton's Batman does.
Yeah.
And Michael Keaton does a really good performance. Actually, most of the performances are really good in this. I kind of am not a fan of Ezra Miller as a person, but I gotta say he actually balanced making two somewhat unique characters work.
Yeah.
I do have my grievances with the fact that Ezra Miller and the writing team never bothered to make an accurate Barry Allen. He's more based on Justice League Unlimited's Flash, seemingly, because that's how he acts, which is actually based on Wally West, but more of a cartoon version. So he's more of like a caricature version of the cartoon version of Wally West. Barry Allen's a depressing character in the comics. He's just sad, and they kind of do that with Barry eventually in the movie. It's kind of confusing because that tone doesn't really pop up. The more actual comic accurate Barry Allen doesn't really pop up until alternate universe Barry shows up. Then you have the more comic relief Barry and the more accurate Barry. But like the start of the movie, which I feel like is kind of an abysmal way to like give a send off to some of the rest of the DCEU cast, like Wonder Woman and Batman. The whole start is kind of dumb until they actually start time traveling. That's another major problem I have.
Yeah, that Wonder Woman cameo is rough.
Yeah, there's like a solid 20 minutes of the movie at the start that's just pointless crap to send off some of the characters that won't be back.
Yep.
Like Wonder Woman, and I mean, I don't know about Wonder Woman coming back. I don't think she is. But like Ben Affleck's Batman, just give him one cool scene. And I mean, the scene was cool. It was a pretty good Batman scene, but in the overall meta of this movie, it's totally pointless. Yeah. And Flash is written completely different. He's written more like the Snyder Flash, which is a joke. Flash was written like shit. He's also canonically a virgin, which is something we needed to know apparently. Which is also kind of pathetic because his Flash is like 10 years out of college. Like, no offense to you virgins, but come on now. If even I can get laid, then I think you would think superhero Flash could probably pull something off eventually. But also that Flash that we see at the start of the movie is very weird, you know? Perhaps some sort of weird asexual thing going on there. Even though he's horny for Iris, so I don't think that's true. I think he's just kind of an incel. Flash is canonically an incel. But once the movie starts time traveling and actually starts being taken serious instead of being a fun action romp like the first 20 minutes was, which the first 20 minutes, Ben Affleck was cool, and so was Jeremy Irons as Alfred, and everything else was fucking garbage for the first like 20 minutes.
Yeah, the baby.
And I was cringing so hard because I was like, great, I have to watch 2.5 hours of this. But once he starts time traveling, his character completely changes.
Yeah.
And
pretty much.
And if you just ignore the first 20 minutes, like I pretty much have, it's actually not a bad movie. It's kind of the superhero equivalent of It's a Wonderful Life. It's about a guy who reflects on mistakes and realizes that maybe if he just wasn't so ignorant to the life he has, he would, you know, even with his hardships and stuff, like he has a lot to live for. So it's quite literally DC's It's a Wonderful Life. Like he time travels instead of,
yeah,
you know, it's a slightly different dynamic.
The Flash of the past, the Flash of the future.
Yeah, he meets the Flash of the past, the potential Flash of the future. He sees what it would be like if his life changed. And basically he sees if he fucks with time, he's going to destroy worlds. Tim Burton's Batman world canonically ends by getting yeeted by General Zod, which I feel like will disappoint fans. It's kind of has a Last Jedi feel.
There was kind of an implication that the only reason Zod was there was because Flash fucked it up by doing time travel stuff. I don't know if that's the case. That's what it seemed like to me.
Yeah.
It's like if Flash goes away, Zod won't show up. Maybe? I don't know.
Like he kind of fixes everything at the end, so I don't know exactly what the implication is. I might have to rewatch it to get better clarity on it. I'll probably rewatch it when it comes out on DVD. I don't plan on like rushing back to rewatch it because this film has its fair share of issues and it's pretty long. it's also kind of like a character study that I think is interesting and a well done character story, but it's not necessarily like, woo, let's sit down, have some beers, and watch The Flash. Like, it's not a particularly fun movie.
No, not really.
Besides that first, like, 20 minutes, which is the part that the fanboys are gonna like.
There's a brief little bit of fun action towards the end.
Yeah, and Keaton was great. I also liked Supergirl and Keaton's deaths. I mean, Supergirl's a little less so, but the whole idea is like basically they spent all this time dicking around finding Supergirl, and it wasn't like Man of Steel where they kind of caught it early so Superman could stop it. Like, the world was already fucked by the time they got to the battle. Yeah. And like Batman's inevitable death, it's like two Flashes, Supergirl, and Batman aren't going to be able to stop the armies of Krypton, like, once the war is started. So the fact that Batman kind of goes out like a baller and then goes out like a baller twice, it's pretty cool. It was a cool way to kind of send off Keaton in the film. And yeah, like, most of the cameos, I've heard people say it's unearned, which might be kind of fair, but at the same time, it's like, all they're trying to do is express that if Barry doesn't get his shit together, the multiverse collapses. Perhaps they didn't have to show every fucking person that was ever in a Superman movie or a Batman movie. You know, that might have been a little unnecessary. But you kind of understand the idea. Like, it would have maybe been cool if we saw like Christopher Reeves and then Nicolas Cage's Superman and then the worlds collide or whatever. Pick a couple characters because some of it was slightly unnecessary, but you understand what they're kind of going for. It was like it wasn't really cameos for cameo's sake, and it was also a different multiverse movie. I'm kind of sick of multiverse movies.
Oh, I'm very sick.
Like, the thing that pisses me off is, like, Spider-Man's been doing a great job with multiverse movies. Like, all of the movies have been solid, but I just kind of miss Spider-Man being, like, a kid over his head having to fight a villain. Yeah. Instead of a kid over his head teleports with 50 other Spider-Mans and they all fight a villain.
Yeah.
But those movies have been solid, so I've kind of given it a pass. But Marvel still has its fair share of multiverse. I don't care that much about multiverse, and this movie kind of trolls you into thinking this is a big multiverse movie. And that's kind of the case, but it's more like what happens if you fuck with time travel, then we're going to have to team up with 20 different Avengers movies. Like, they bring back a legacy character, but it actually, like, serves a story purpose.
It's not a big multiverse crossover.
And you hear about all these characters that show up. Like, they're advertising that Nicolas Cage is in it. They're advertising that fucking this, that, and the next guy's in it. And it's like, yeah, they're in it. But it's more to show, like, the time travel thing. This isn't like a Crisis on Infinite Earths or something where we're going to see them fight. I think DC's probably going to go back to its roots a bit after this and start working towards it. I'm sure in 10 years we're going to get a Crisis on Infinite Earths that hopefully is earned at that point, and hopefully Marvel's done with the multiverse trend at that point, so we can
we'll see.
But I mean, what else does Marvel have but the multiverse at this point?
They have Jonathan Majors.
Jonathan Majors, and also it turns out the guy who played Namor like raped a bunch of chicks.
Wow, they're really picking winners lately.
Yeah, Namor, who's supposed to be an incredibly important character moving forward, is a fucking rapist, and Jonathan Majors is a women beater. Really picking winners.
An attempted murderer.
The other thing is, the guy who played Namor was alright, but kind of forgettable. Jonathan Majors sucks. At least Ezra Miller did a good performance, you know?
Yeah, he was pretty alright in this.
Good performance, terrible person, because we can segue into the allegations.
Yeah.
Not even allegations. There's videos of him just laying the beat down on women, and
kidnapping that little girl.
kids.
And, you know, I guess there's no video of him having sex with the little girl, but that's certainly what was heavily implied.
Yeah, there's
he
a
got
lot of-
away with it so that DC could release this movie.
Yeah, the problem is people aren't liking the movie because it's probably too smart for most people. So I'm not saying the movie is like a 5-star excellent. It's okay. It's pretty good, but you know, Ezra Miller, the allegations are just gonna come to the forefront because this movie's too smart for most superhero fans. The underutilization of CGI Christopher Reeves is
I
gonna
don't see why
disappoint
everyone
people.
hates this movie.
Because Michael Keaton dies.
Okay, yeah. And
I don't know. People are fucking stupid, that's why.
yeah, fair enough.
Everybody hates the movie because people are too fucking stupid. And they're like, Marvel's getting like repetitive and stuff. But then they still give Ant-Man a good score and say this shit's garbage because it's not repetitive. So easy to talk and say they want something different, and then you get something different and it sucks, and then you watch Ant-Man and it's good.
Yeah, well,
Like that's what I see
it
a
is
lot
what it
on like
is.
these Facebook superhero movie forums that I always get recommended. I get recommended them, and then it's like this fucking, and they all forgive Jonathan Majors, but a Marvel fan will forgive Jonathan Majors, but not Ezra Miller.
I mean, I don't forgive Jonathan Majors or Ezra Miller.
See, exactly.
I just think this movie's fine. Ezra Miller's still a weird, maybe pedophile woman beater who just runs around beating up
Confirmed
women for
woman
fun.
beater, probable pedophile.
Yeah, I've seen the video of him choke slamming the woman to the ground.
Yeah, he choke slammed, did some WWE shit. I think if they were smart, they'd recruit him to the WWE.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I guess we've reviewed pretty much all of the DCEU on this channel. The only ones that came out before we started the channel were, well, actually they both came out after, but in our hiatus period between like 2015 and 16. I guess
Man of Steel.
Man of Steel, which we never reviewed. But I think we've reviewed every other movie on this channel in one form or another.
Yeah, we've gone back and talked about BVS.
We talked about BVS twice. We double dipped BVS.
Oh, we double dipped the fucking Justice League too, counting the Snyder cut.
Yeah, I mean, kind of double dipped, but there's two different. So, I mean, we went through it. We've talked about the state of the DCEU many times. We don't know if Aquaman 2 is part of the DCEU, per se, but we are at the point, you know, this is it. It's going
This
for
is
the reboot.
pretty much it, yeah.
Also, this movie does not set up the reboot, which I think will disappoint fans.
No.
In no way.
No, this would have been the perfect opportunity to
Literally,
just
the whole point
transition
of
Flash into...
this is a loose adaptation, a
universe.
very, very, very loose adaptation of Flashpoint, the comic, which
Unless
was used to
they're planning
reboot
for
the
the-
DC universe, and they just never fucking bothered.
Unless their plan for the new universe is George Clooney Batman again.
That would be kind of keynote. If you get the right director, like George Clooney having to raise a kid as Batman.
Yeah.
I actually saw someone say Pedro Pascal should be Batman and raise his child. I would watch it. Sure, why not? Because they're gonna pick someone boring like Jensen Ackles. Everyone wants Jensen Ackles. Like, I get it. He's like a good martial artist and shit, but he's not that good of an actor.
I don't get the Pedro Pascal meme anymore.
He fucking, because
I
he
know.
raises children in all the shows. So if Batman
get
has a
that.
kid, then you may as well make it Pedro Pascal. I also just like Pedro Pascal. I think he's a charming guy. Do you think
Yeah.
watching Superman versus the Mole Men 2 days before we watched this movie paid off the George Reeves cameo for you more?
Yeah, it really helped. But anyway, yeah, the DCU has been quite the journey. Quite the journey from humble beginnings of a $100 million Zack Snyder movie that sucks dick to a $100 million Zack Snyder movie that sucks dick to a $100 million Zack Snyder movie that sucks dick. And throughout the DCEU, they just kept making the same mistakes. and letting Zack Snyder make them and making them edgy and weird and gray and.
Well, here's what I learned from the DCEU, and it's still kind of the thing with DC. We'll see if this changes in the James Gunn era. But DC had no firm leadership and would just hire people and say, do whatever with whatever characters you want. We don't give a shit. Just make us some money. Because I don't think Warner Brothers executives understand or care about any of the characters. Which is fair. But they never cared to play it safe. And that means you got some real stinkers like Suicide Squad and BVS and that type of shit. And occasionally you get something good like The Suicide Squad or The Batman.
Eventually, yeah. That was way after they realized they needed to do something.
Yeah, I guess the first few were just like covered in studio interference.
Yeah, they were.
No, it was like no studio interference, and then they were like, "Well, we should start interfering," and they really started to interfere, and those movies that they really interfered on sucked, and they already had shitty filmmakers and scripts, so then they stopped interfering at all, and that has led to mixed results.
Yeah,
sometimes but there's a lot of shit they made that's better than anything Marvel's ever made in the MCU. And there's a lot of shit that is so abysmal.
Zack Snyder.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
For a long time, Marvel was just consistently better because it was consistent. Nowadays, Marvel just puts out whatever bullshit.
Yeah, they're on the
downward spiral.
They're on the DCEU middle period where anyone could make anything, and it just crashed them into a wall. Anyone can make anything, but it's also covered in studio interference.
Like there's not much to look forward to for DC. I mean, I guess now we're probably going into a renaissance where we have a real filmmaker running the show. And
we can hope that it pays off.
We can hope it pays off, but I feel like we'll add more consistency to DC, but probably see less phenomenal projects.
Yeah. I mean, one of their other big mistakes was pretty much from the get-go. They were just trying to cram in all the cinematic universe shit.
Yeah.
Batman vs. Superman is such a clusterfuck. They got Man of Steel, I'm not going to say right, because that movie sucks, but Man of Steel's just a standalone Superman movie.
Man of Steel is like the biggest meh ever. It's not even that terrible, but it's not good.
And then Batman vs. Superman has to introduce Batman in a crossover movie. And they also decide to introduce Wonder Woman prominently, as well as hint at Flash and Aquaman and all this other crap. Instead of just making a damn movie. Or making a Batman movie before you make Batman vs. Superman. Ben Affleck doesn't even have his own damn Batman movie.
Right.
He's just a crossover character.
He literally was an exclusively crossover character. Yeah, Ben Affleck was a missed opportunity.
The Flash and Wonder Woman have their own movies.
Because especially like the first 20 minutes of this movie, everything is abysmal except Ben Affleck's Batman and Jeremy Irons' Alfred was a pretty cool dynamic, and it proves that if you had the right director and right script, you could probably make something kind of fun with that duo, kind of running the show.
Yep.
But we're never getting that shit, so whatever.
Nope.
I'm not that sad about it. But it's just interesting to note.
Yeah, it's...
the SD card is 1 minute
been a weird
left.
fucking ride. Anyway. Oopsie. Connor, would you recommend The Flash?
Yeah, I'd recommend The Flash. You'll probably hate it, but I liked it. So Aiden, would you recommend The Flash?
Yeah, Flash. Pretty cute movie. Fun enough, fun fan service. A little goofy. Enjoyable.